Hello and welcome to a Thursday Business News Report. It's now time to bring you our feature on the show today as we focus on the energy sector now as the price of liquefied petroleum gas, that's cooking gas, spikes further across the various parts of the country. Indications have emerged that marketers' inability to offtake about 450,000 metric tons per annum of the product allocation is said to be some of the issues responsible for the supply shortages. Under our price watch list of the product, gas has risen further to 560 naira per kilogram, with the popular 12.5 kg selling between 7,000 and 7,200 naira across the country. The new price range indicates about 73.1% increase against the 256 naira per kilogram, or about 3,200 naira for 12.5 kilogram recorded as at the first quarter of this year. Nigerians are now looking back to rely on alternative sources of energy such as kerosene and charcoal, which have also recorded some marginal increases since the spike in the cost of cooking gas. Well, joining me virtually to discuss this and much more, I have Basi Essien, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Association of LPG Marketers. Good to have you on the breakfast show this morning.
Good morning, David.
Now, your association has had several meetings to ensure that it intervenes in this spike we've seen so far, and then in an effort to also bring down the cost of cooking gas. What are some of the elements you see fueling this spike? But we also have reports that marketers are also unable to offtake about 450,000 metric tons of gas per annum. That's looking at the product allocation, and that's one of the issues that has been said to be fueling the supply shortage. Do you share in this sentiment?
David, good morning again. I don't actually share in that sentiment because if we, by December last year, we were virtually consuming 1.2 million metric tons. And they're not telling us that it's the inability to offtake 450,000 metric tons that's responsible for the spike in price. That's false. You know, because if 450,000 metric tons and we are consuming 1.2 over 1.2, 450 metric tons can't even solve what the problem is right now. So it's always a problem of shortage in supply, and that is why we had the imported element that normally comes in to augment the short supply. So until we have adequate supply, which the 450,000 metric tons alone cannot cover, until we have adequate supply before we can actually talk of a reasonable pricing of the product right now.
Are you surprised by the new phenomenon where we are seeing increases in the price of kerosene and also charcoal, because that's the next alternative Nigerians are looking at, and this largely affects our gas penetration targets? Gas ought to be the future of energy, but now it's becoming much more difficult to find it available. So what do you think is the way forward in terms of cutting the cost of gas, interventions, and how government can really take a hold of this situation, especially as our import level remains higher than our local production base?
As it is now, we've always said that every entity, every company that's involved in the local production of gas should try as much as possible to domesticate into the local market their production quota, to take care of the local market first of all. But as it is, since that is not possible, and even that is put in place, it may not still be able to meet the total demand. For now, we have no choice but to resort to importation. And if that's the case, then government should put in place conditions that will make even this importation a bit reasonable, because you can't import at such a high rate together with the associated costs that's been put in there, and with the issue of the VAT that's still coming up, which we're not actually sure the implementation right now. It's putting fear into importers. Nobody will want to come and import and burn his fingers. So, except for now, since we don't have adequate supply, the other alternative is to allow the importations for now while we build up the local capacity to take care of the market. So we're asking that government should moderate the requirements for importation, such that for now, at least we'll be able to cushion the short supply. You can't blame people for going back to alternative sources of cooking energy if what they have right now they can't afford it. And of course, it's a market dynamics. When people are now actually looking out for something and the pressure is much on that, people capitalize to fix their price. That's why you find that charcoal, firewood eventually going up around, and kerosene, because people have no other option but to veer into other cooking sources. And that is why the practitioners in that areas are actually capitalizing on the current demand.
We're already in the Ember month, and there's this sense of panic as well. We see people stockpiling just to ensure that maybe come later this month, by the month of November or December, they don't have to pay much more. This phenomenon is not coming to you as a surprise. So how then do we also see, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the interventions that would likely moderate the price increment of the surge? Do you see any of those happening in the short term?
Frankly speaking, I don't think within the short term anything will be done, because it's even getting worse as we speak. You see, in the October 2020, a 20 metric ton of gas was selling for 3.9 million. By December, it rose to 5.3 million. By the first quarter of this year, it has gone up to 6 million. And by September, it ended up at 9.4. As we speak this morning, some are even proposing 10.2 or 10.150 million. So for now, except something is done in respect of this supply, which we have always talked about, we can't see the price coming down so soon. So even the issue of hoarding, stockpiling, how many will you stockpile? How many people have more than 2 or 3 cylinders in their homes? And one day this same stock will still get exhausted, and you go back to the market and buy at the prevailing price at that time. So even the idea of stockpiling is not even the best, because when you stockpile now, you start begin to have safety concern about where to store the cylinders and how to make sure that nothing happens to them. So it's not even advisable to say, oh, because of the amber month, yes, the festive month, they're becoming very soon, people should start stockpiling. The part is that we keep talking to the authorities and hoping that they will do the right thing. At least if we need to still depend on the import to augment the shortfall, then they should make sure that they put the right things in place to make sure that even the import comes in at a reasonable price that's easily affordable. We can't be talking about gas expansion and yet we don't find the gas to utilize. Then it makes the whole program is actually set to fail, which wasn't the intention in ab initio.
And what do you see the worst being as we have the situation on ground? Do you see a further spike in the price of cooking gas anytime soon? In the short term, looking at this month as well?
Come again, I didn't get that.
We've had at least 5 price increments in about 3 months. Do you see any further spike in the price of cooking gas? And what do you think might be the worst situation that we could have at hand looking at gas, cooking gas?
Yeah, right now, if the customs goes ahead to implement the custom duties on gas and the VAT is sustained, they will definitely, the price will increase further. That's the best we can look at.
Well, thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Basi Essien, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Association of LPG Gas Marketers. Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show.
Thank you, David.